Two. Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, December 15th, 2021. The time is 10:32 a.m. This is a special meeting agenda with Galena Consulting. Ann is our presenter with Galena. Thank you, Ann, for attending. Attending are Commissioners Brooks and Filios. Commissioner Leslie Duncan is excused. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. And so we have a presentation, and it is a discussion by Ann Westcott from Galena on implementing impact fees for the county. Ann, it's all yours. Take it away.
Thank you, sir. I thought I'd start out by giving you an update on what we are doing with all of the fire districts, since you are our partner in that.
Okay.
And it's one of the other reasons I'm up here this week. As you know, you established an advisory committee to facilitate our conversations with the 7 fire districts and 1 EMS district on their pursuit of impact fees. All of those jurisdictions now have their final reports, and all of those who have cities that they also serve have had their advisory committees for each of those cities review and approve those reports.
Okay.
So we are now in the process, as I was last night at Hauser City Council, of bringing all of those reports to the cities and moving the cities along toward their adoption of those fees on behalf of those fire districts in the EMS district. We have 2 fire districts that serve no cities, Micah Kidd and Eastside. They are both ready to go as well. So my intention was, as soon as I get through and make sure all the cities are still on board, because I don't want to come to you with a whole lot of different, we will start meeting with your advisory committee, because there is an unincorporated portion of all of these fire districts. They will review all 8 of the reports and then make a recommendation to you. So I imagine by February, we will be back to you to present the advisory committee's findings and recommendations on all of those fees.
2 things. So what we need to do then now is form this advisory committee
We already have the advisory committee.
for the county?
Yes. We put together a slate of people, and you are more than welcome to either have another slate or add people to it. We used 1 individual from each of the existing fire districts, so they had already had some experience with that report. And then there are 2 people who are just representatives that haven't been through the process at all. All of them have gone through the kind of Impact Fee 101 with me, so they've all been part of a presentation and know what their role is. And I can send you the list of those names if you'd like.
I think your question is specifically, go ahead.
Well, we don't need our own committee then?
You do. You do have,
Okay.
you do have your own committee. You adopted a resolution establishing it.
Okay.
I believe at that time the discussion was, I think that the chiefs had said, we have people from each of our jurisdictions that meet the statutory requirement for this. I will send you a list of those names just to
Those
confirm.
people that meet the statutory requirements for the fire districts would also meet the statutory requirements
Right.
for the county.
Ironically, now with change in legislation last year, the fire districts don't even have their own impact fee advisory committees. They're just at the county and city level. Many cities and counties don't want to get bothered with this, and so we kind of do all of that for them. But I will make sure that you know who those people are, so that if you want to have a different slate of people on
Okay,
yours.
so that leads me into my first question.
Yes.
Anyway, will they circle back around?
It's okay. Go ahead.
Which I don't ever want to hear again. That's almost as bad as a reach out. Could you, just for people who might be seeing this or listening to it in the future, tell us what Galena Consulting is all about?
Absolutely. Galena Consulting was founded 20 years ago in Idaho. As a consulting firm, we support municipalities, counties, and local taxing districts in achieving their own performance objectives, quite frankly. And a lot of what we do is work that is focused on helping cities and counties remain fiscally sustainable as they grow. And that often means impact fees. So we do a lot of impact fee work and take pride in the fact that we've not been sued in 20 years of doing that, and that our clients have been able to implement their programs with the support of the building community and to ensure that property taxpayers are not subsidizing growth, which has become even more and more important as the cost of construction and the amount of growth, particularly in North Idaho, has increased. So we have been doing impact fee studies. We've probably done hundreds of them over the last 20 years. But we retain our client base throughout the state. About 6 years ago, the legislature changed the statute and allowed fire districts to have impact fees, but because fire districts can't adopt ordinances and don't collect building permits, they have to go to the cities and the counties to collect on their behalf.
Okay.
And so this is why we have a very complicated process that we're going through, and my strategy is when
Just hang with us, Ann. So this is Chris, who's calling in. This is Chris. You've reached the Board of County Commissioners. Who am I speaking with? Hello?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, this is Wade Clary. I dialed your number wrong.
Okay.
I was trying to get the Coeur d'Alene City bus.
Oh, my goodness, no, you've reached the Board of County Commissioners.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so the individual you might want to speak with would be 208-446-1608.
Okay. 1608. Okay. 446. Thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome.
At least he didn't say, would you like to extend the warranty on your car?
And I sent him to Jody's phone. He wants the Coeur d'Alene bus. That's us,
That's it.
basically. Okay, I'm sorry. Ann, go right ahead.
impressive, very impressive.
Anyway,
So, because I think it's a very complicated process that the statute has left us in, that's why I have been working with county commissioners or having these presentations for the last couple of years and with the city council so that all electeds understand what we are talking about, that they are prepared for the process that we're going through, and we continue to check in with them. My general plan that has worked thus far throughout the state is to come back to the cities and the counties all in one line, all in agreement, so that you all have kind of a regional conversation about funding growth. And then that segues nicely into what we're discussing here as to whether or not the county has interest or if it's a valuable tool for you in funding some of your capital as well.
So, again, for the benefit of those who are uninitiated, I'm a little initiated, but not a lot.
I've tried to initiate you.
Huh?
Yes.
Yeah. Impact fees do what?
Well, let's just start right in. We'll
Okay,
just
but I
start right
mean,
in and do
people,
that.
people going, well, I don't think this is interesting.
It's terribly interesting.
I think it's fascinating
Yes.
because it forces new growth to pay for itself.
So yes, this is what we've been hearing, all of us who are residents of Idaho, with this growth. With this growth comes new costs to serve,
Absolutely.
provide services, and with that becomes very costly capital. So impact fees have, we'll just go right
All
into
right.
the first page or page 2 of this presentation. They've been used in Idaho for over 25 years. And as we've seen considerable growth, particularly in the Treasure Valley and in northern Idaho, we hear our taxpayers say they want growth to pay its own way. They don't want to subsidize the cost of growth by either being asked to approve additional bonds, override levies, or have their taxes go up. So we have new interest now. For a long time, I think a lot of cities have been involved and have had their impact fees for fire and police, parks and streets, if that's a service that they provide. But now we're seeing counties as well feeling the push for new capital within their sheriffs and jails, parks and waterways, and then counties that do provide their own roads and bridges services are also looking at that. So we are currently working with, we've just finished Ada County's impact fees, and that did include a jail, sheriff, paramedic, and coroner's office impact fee. They have not been adopted yet. We're beginning Elmore County, and they have about 6 other districts that are joining them. Gem County has been adopted, and it included sheriff and roads and bridges. Payette County is starting, and they have about 6 jurisdictions that are participating, including sheriff and jail. And Valley County is doing the same process as well. So I think we've reached this point of momentum where the counties are saying, well, if everyone's coming to us asking us to collect impact fees, maybe we should look at it ourselves. So the answer to your biggest question is, what are impact fees? Impact fees are a one-time fee paid at building permit by new development. So if I'm going to add a garage or a shop on my property or remodel my house, I'm not going to pay an impact fee. If I'm going to tear my insurance office down and rebuild it the same size, I'm not going to pay an impact fee. A new house, a new apartment, a new grocery store, for example, will be assessed an impact fee, because by adding new built environment, we are creating additional demands on our roadway system, for our sheriffs, for our jails, and for our services. Right. Impact fees are only allowed to provide support for capital facilities. So when we ask the question, does growth pay for itself? There's 2 sides. Does it pay for itself in terms of operations? Does it hire the deputies? Does it hire the firefighters? Does it generate enough new tax income to pay for the additional costs? And then the other part is, does it pay for itself in terms of capital? Is there enough money left over from that to build new roads, to widen roads, to add jail cells, for example? We know in Idaho, because of just some of the ways that our tax structures are governed, and then some of the impact of House Bill 389 from this last legislature, that even though we are growing significantly, our taxing jurisdictions are not actually realizing the full assessment value of that new revenue. So there's very rarely money left over to pay for capital, and capital is the most expensive in many cases. So impact fees allow us to calculate a proportionate share. So we determine what the county or the jurisdiction needs to build or buy in order to provide service to growth, or just to replace existing capital. And then we determine which of these projects, or what portion of these projects, are demanded by growth. And that allows us to recover the cost of the proportional share of these costs from growth through an impact fee. We cannot use impact fees to cure deficiencies. So if your jail is already overcrowded, we can't fix that. But if your jail is fine now and you're planning for the future to be able to have additional capacity for additional inmates, that is growth related.
So we have pods that are not finished. They're just big enclosures of.
Correct.
Those would be eligible.
Those would be eligible,
okay.
yes. So you've already been planning, you already are thinking ahead.
Right.
And I've got an example that is about jail and about a county that maybe did not plan ahead as much. They will remain unnamed. We can't cure existing deficiencies, and impact fees don't pay for operating expenses. But theoretically, if we are utilizing impact fees to recover the cost from growth for growth-related capital, we are reducing the burden or the competition for the available general funds or property tax funds.
What about people say that the county is bursting at the seams. Can we build a new building and use impact fees?
The only categories that are allowed by state statute right now for impact fees for a county would be sheriff, jail, coroners is kind of, a question whether it's part of your whole public safety process, roads and bridges, fire, parks and waterways. These are the things that are allowed. In Idaho, public buildings, like your administration building, are not allowed. In other states, cultural facilities, administration buildings, all sorts of things are allowed, as are schools, but not in Idaho at this point.
Courthouses count?
No. Courthouses do not count at this point.
So I think that answers that question, right? Yeah, specifically, I think what Bill and Nancy were alluding to is we were going to expand our courthouse with an additional courtroom or 2 and offices for both our defense and prosecuting attorneys. But I guess the answer is no.
That would make sense. It absolutely is necessitated by growth.
But it was specifically.
But it's not specifically prohibited, but it is not also allowed in the state statute.
Okay.
So it certainly could be something you could try. That would be a question for your legal counsel. It could be something we continue to discuss with your legislative representatives about the need to expand the definition there.
Okay, thank you.
Legal requirements on page 4, I think a lot of times people are concerned that impact fees are very complicated and there's a lot of chance for litigation, and that is not true. The statute in Idaho is no more burdensome than anyone else's. Well, this last year they made it a little bit more burdensome, but it still is possible. The most important thing to note about our statute is that they do require this advisory committee, and that's made up of builders, contractors, real estate professionals, and just general taxpayers, people who are community members. And so the work that I do is I vet the data points or the assumptions that I'm making as I go, and we get their input and kind of a double check for them. So by the time we come to a city council or a county commission, there are community members who've said this makes sense, and that you have a general sense that even people who will be paying these fees have said, yes, this is right, this is accurate, it's been transparent, and that's a really important part of the process. Another part is having to do a capital improvements plan. In some states, you can just look at how much you've already invested in capital and charge the next person the same amount. In Idaho, they want us to look forward, which I think is a good disciplined practice of a 10-year capital improvement plan, and so that I think is the best way to go about planning for this. And so that's really the bulk of what this study involves. Then revenues are to be used within 8, in some cases 11 years. If we have developed the CIP properly, that should never be a problem because we're cash flowing it and we're determining when those things will be purchased. When we do our study, we do provide recommendations for how ordinances would be written, and this lays forth how someone would get an impact fee credit. If I'm a developer and I'm going to build, I'm trying to make this relevant to you, it's probably not as relevant to the county, but if I were to donate land for a fire station, I would have my impact fees credited because I can't donate and also pay the impact fee. That would be double dipping. So there are also, it's very straightforward how the fees are to be accounted for, separate from property taxes, etc. So that's not that difficult. It just needs to be well set up and managed, and doesn't take a great deal of administrative time. On page 5, I start with kind of the 7 questions that I ask. I believe that the impact fee process should be in layperson's language, that anyone should be able to understand this, especially those who are paying for it. So the first 4 questions I ask are, who are we serving now? What level of service do we provide? That could be the number of deputies per 1,000 population, for example. What capital do we have now that allows us to accommodate these deputies and provide this service, property and evidence, records, etc.? And then I ask question 4 that's not required in the analysis, but I like to do a double check, and I do say, how much is every existing taxpayer or every existing residential unit and non-residential square foot paid in to provide this level of service? Because that shows kind of over time how everyone who already lives here has built up this capital asset inventory. Then we start looking forward and we say, how much do we think we're going to grow? How many new houses? How many new non-residential square feet? As we're working with the fire districts, and particularly Kootenai County EMS system, as they serve the entire county, our projections are around 30,000 new homes for the county, including all the incorporated areas, for the next 10 years. And so then we ask whomever is doing the study, what do you need to build or buy in order to continue this level of service? Impact fees are designed to make sure that our level of service doesn't get worse as we grow. It doesn't take longer to provide to a 911 call. The roads don't become more congested, for example. And then that's my job, to be able to determine which parts of that capital plan are because of growth and create some proportional relationship. And then we do this fancy math that you'll see on page 6, maybe if I can turn the page. Pretty much third grade math. The numerator is the total cost of what we need to build or buy, divided by who's coming, the number of new households, new non-residential square feet. And that math is the impact fee. So it is clearly not rocket science. Yes.
So question. So if we have a number of entities, like you said, Kootenai EMS, Kootenai Fire and Rescue, fire and/or highway districts, and then of course the county itself, our facilities like our jail. All these are basically additive.
They are additive.
So-
That's exactly the word.
So technically, somebody, and I'm just going to throw this out, Ann, somebody purchasing a new home at, well, nowadays, let's call it $500,000 anyway.
Okay,
They
we'll go
could
with
be,
that.
they could be paying 10 grand potentially.
The highest additive impact fees that we see in Idaho right now are in Boise, and they are $12,000, but that assumes the adoption of all of Ada County's fees. Ada County Highway District has one of the highest fees because of the amount of infrastructure that they're building. Boise has a very high level of service for parks, so their parks fees are $5,000 a house. But that's, I would see most of the fire districts in this area coming in at $1,500 to $2,500. That's probably the range per house. And fire fees tend to be the most expensive. A sheriff fee is generally not going to be as expensive.
I've heard, just anecdotally, of areas in Texas where it's 6%.
It is easy in California, Florida, Texas to pay $40,000 or $50,000 just in impact fees. And that's
So
in addition to your
if
building
you're
permit
buying
and
a
your
home,
utility.
For $500,000, it's $35,000 in impact fees.
Easily, yes, yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that's shocking to all of us who are Idaho natives. That just seems like an astronomical amount of money. But I think we also look at who's building and who's buying here. And the fact that impact fees are not deterring people from building or buying here. So the market is bearing that amount of
Yes,
cost.
good point.
And elected officials are saying, we don't want non-sustainable growth. So that's kind of where we are at this point.
Okay.
If you'd like, I can give you a quick example of how we did a jail impact
Sure.
fee for this unnamed county, but you'll
Okay.
see from its population, you'll probably figure out who it is. This county has about 500,000 people in it, and we believe that they'll be adding almost 123,000 new people over the next 10 years. So that's adding an additional 50,000 residential units. So that's not terribly much more than what we're talking about for Kootenai County. Another 30 million non-residential square feet. This is a very urban area, so it does have a high level of non-residential. So we talked to this county about their jail, and remember I said I like to get an idea of how much everyone has already paid into the system. The jail facilities, including all of their various units and the vehicle maintenance and their current fleet and capital, it's about $168 million. So on page 9, you see I took that $168 million and I divided it by the number of existing households and existing non-residential square feet. So every tax-paying home in this county has paid in, their proportional share has been $642 into the system. So I kind of put a pin in that, and then later on I'm going to go back and see what my calculations, how close they come to that. If it were double that, I would have to question my math, because it would be kind of a red flag that we were over collecting from growth unless I had a good explanation. So then we were looking forward with this, the sheriff, and we were talking about the jail, and this county in particular is completely overcrowded, close to violation of federal law, overcrowded. So they already have plans to add a whole additional pod, and that pod is almost $45 million, and because it's addressing existing overcrowding, impact fees are not going to pay for that. So they already have a $45 million problem that they will likely go to some sort of bond to address. But when I add on all of the growth that will be coming, we take the number of households, we determine the number of people in the households, we have existing data on the percentage of people who may be incarcerated per population. We know that they're going to need an additional pod by 2030, so another $45 million. Now that second pod is entirely growth related, because if this county never added any more people, they wouldn't need any more jail. So we add a portion of the new maintenance facility as we are adding inmates. We are also adding additional buses, etc., additional vehicles. So of a $91 million 10-year CIP, this county is going to need to pay for half of it with tax dollars or some other source, and half of it is impact fee eligible. So when you turn to page 11, there's that $45 million that can come from impact fees, and I divide it by the almost 50,000 new houses and 30 million non-residential square feet. And if every house were to pay its share, every newly built house, they'd pay $715. And we go back to that sheet before where everyone existing has paid in $642. That's pretty close. It's pretty close. It's legally close enough that says that we're not asking growth to pay significantly more than everyone has already paid in, particularly because everyone's going to be asked to pay for a bond for the first pod that's not impact fee eligible, and that will increase their buy-in.
And Ann, is this calculation determined over an 8 or an 11-year time span?
10 years.
10 years.
I don't know why we picked 8 to 11 years to use the money when no one plans in 8 to 11 year numerators, but we do a 10-year.
Okay.
You can do a 20-year. I don't think any of us can think that far in the future, but 10 years makes sense for me in terms of planning. So should the county the county commission choose to adopt these, their advisory committee has recommended adopting them. We did have a change in elected officials last year, so we have kind of need to go back and do some more discussion. If they were to adopt these, then every new house built in this county would pay the $715, and the non-residential would pay their portion. They've also developed sheriff impact fees, and this is probably similar to your case. There are some cities in this county that have their own police department and do not receive sheriff services. There are some that are in the unincorporated area, and that is their law enforcement. And then there are some communities that hire the sheriff's office to provide that.
As in Hayden, right? As in Hayden for us, okay.
Wasn't that just in the news? I believe so.
Yeah.
A little bit of a
Yeah,
talk about
good point.
sustainability, yes. So in that case, we would look into the contract that you have. It's a very good example. So we look into how much Hayden is paying Kootenai County for that service, and it seems that perhaps they're not even paying the full cost of operations.
Really?
I'm just citing what I read in the paper.
We've had that discussion.
Yes, I know. So they're obviously not paying for their proportional share of capital. So since there's no duplication in their contract, their operating contract, you could assess the sheriff's fee to development in Hayden.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
So the last page is just kind of the process that we go through, but I've pretty much clarified that for you. So I think in this county, the categories that would be eligible for you to consider would be sheriff, jail, maybe coroner if you wanted to do that, and parks and waterways. Because it's my understanding you do not do roads and bridges, it's all highway districts.
That's correct.
Yes.
Bill, any questions?
Oh, great presentation.
Yeah, outstanding. Okay, so basically what would happen, correct me if I'm wrong, is all this gets rolled up, so to speak, EMS, highway districts, the sheriff, our own stuff, which would be the sheriff, the jail, parks and waterways, whatever. And then basically it gets rolled up and we go into a public hearing.
Yes.
So it's almost like an all or nothing. Not really. No,
No, that's a very interesting question, and I'm trying to just think a step ahead with Kootenai County and all the different pieces.
Right.
Because for one thing, if we're going to be cross-collecting among jurisdictions, there's going to be a lot of MOUs signed that make it clear what we're doing. It's extremely important that everyone plays. The trouble that Kootenai County got into about 10 plus years ago was
Yes.
that not everyone played, and that's not equitable. So that's why I'm taking a lot of time making sure that everyone's involved, that the elected officials are saying, yes, we want to continue to proceed with this. It certainly is much easier when you're growing as fast as you are to have these conversations, and you're having taxpayers very specifically say they don't want to pay for growth. What we would do is, so we have your advisory committee, names to be kind of vetted through you. If the county were to do their own impact fee study on any of these categories, I would use that same impact fee advisory committee. You own it, it's yours. I would vet those studies with them. They would make a recommendation to you in the same way they will on all those fire and EMS fees. You could go ahead and adopt fire fees, in February if you wanted to. We wouldn't be done with yours by that time. But we'd have the whole ordinance and everything in place so that you could slip yours in later.
But there needs to be a specific impact fee for each individual area, like sheriff and
Yes.
coroner.
So what we would be
and-
doing, let's say you decided to do all four. We would have four, I would have one report, but it would have 4 sections in it. I would have 4 separate fees.
Got it.
You could up or down or moderate any of those 4. You could decide. So in Valley County, we looked at it and we said, you have enough capacity in your jail. We're not going to do a jail fee, but we're going to still focus on these. Let's say we got it to the point where you said, yes, that seems like a reasonable amount. The process has been fair. It's been transparent. We're going to go to public hearing. There's 2 public hearings. The first one is at P&Z because the law requires us to amend your comp plan with the CIPs, which I think is more of just an expectation that so that the planning community knows that this is still in alignment with our plan, that you're not off building a jail that's completely inconsistent with your own comp plan.
Okay.
So it's just a text amendment to the comp plan. Once that happens, and then I assume they just make an opinion to you, and you have to make the actual vote on that amendment.
It's not like there's a public vote,
It's a public hearing.
Hearing.
Right. It's a
Right.
public hearing. Yes, all of this
but
is.
then we decide.
You're the deciders. Even the Impact Fee Advisory Committee is advisory, so they'll make a recommendation. It comes down to you in a final public hearing, a fee hearing, in the same way that you'd, post a fee hearing to increase your building permit fees or something. So
Okay.
you have a lot of latitude at that point to adopt, not adopt, ask me to go back and change the CIP. I'm not gonna let it get to a public hearing before you've seen it. So we're gonna be doing, at a staff level, a lot of review. This is an interesting time always to see whether or not there's a good collaborative relationship between the commissioner's office and all the department heads. Because sometimes it's like, oh, I had no idea those were your plans. And so we get to facilitate that conversation. And it's a great time to have that conversation. What are we going to do with the jail? What are we going to do with sheriff? And a lot of time the conversation kind of veers off into operational discussions, because if you say we need this many more deputies, if I say you need this many more deputies to keep your level of service constant, and you and your finance team says there's no way we can pay for that, then we say, okay, we already need to acknowledge that there's going to be a level of service decline simply because we won't have the tax revenue to pay for those people. So let's size down the new, sheriff's administration space accordingly. So that process will be going on. By the time we get to public hearing, it should not be a surprise to anyone. If you choose to have some additional open houses, you can do that with the community. In the old days, absolutely nobody showed up to those hearings. The building community is generally supportive. I work with the state board of the BCA. They're generally supportive if it's done properly and transparently. Obviously, as a lot of people are now doing this additive, it's cutting into their own pro formas. But I'm seeing a lot of taxpayers show up to the hearings when they understand that they are not paying the impact fee, and that it really is designed to keep them from subsidizing the cost of growth. They will attend these hearings and support the adoption of these fees. So just kind of a look ahead of what you might expect in this process.
Nancy, did you have any questions?
No, I have a lot going on inside my head of what we could use these impact fees to fund, but I don't have any questions at the moment.
Okay.
And we can have that conversation offline, absolutely.
So basically, roughly speaking, how many entities would be participating in Kootenai County? If you could, just from what you know today, list them. You have Kootenai Fire and Rescue.
Kootenai County Fire and Rescue,
EMS.
Kootenai County EMS Systems.
Uh-huh.
Then there's Northern Lakes Fire, Timberlake Fire, Hauser Lake Fire, Spirit Lake Fire, Micah Kidd, Eastside. Worley is still trying to decide what they're doing.
Okay.
So those are that's all the fire districts. We have not had any conversations with highway districts in this county at this point.
Okay.
And the cities, many of your cities already have. Post Falls has their own impact fees. Hayden has their own impact fees. Coeur d'Alene, I think, has something that sort of looks like an impact fee. And the cities can do this independently. It's the districts that really need your collaboration because they are serving the
That's right, we don't have
unincorporated area.
jurisdiction. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So now with Hayden, if we were to assess an impact fee to make up the, if you want to call it deficiency, right, in the cost of service versus what we collect, that would be an additional impact fee over and above what they're currently.
Right, so Hayden is in Northern Lakes? Is that Northern Lakes? Yes. So Northern Lakes is going to go to the city of Hayden and say, we would like you to adopt and collect our impact fee and then send us the money. And the county, Kootenai County, could also go to Hayden and say, if you would like us to continue providing sheriff service for you, not only do we need to discuss our operating contract, but we would like you to have growth pay for itself by also collecting our fee and sending the money to us.
Okay.
That's how that would work.
Very important how you word it.
I was very careful about how I worded it, yes. Northern Lakes is basically asking for a favor from the city because of how the statute is written in the state. You are in a different position of transactional service providing, so.
Okay.
I mean, you could have already negotiated the cost of capital into your contract with Hayden. And then we would have said, well, we'll just take the money that already is coming from the city and put it in our capital fund, and it will take care of, and we won't assess that fee in Hayden. So that's where I really work with your business analyst and say, in your contract, are you recovering any capital costs, any fleet replacement costs, any of that? And if the answer is no, then I say, okay, you can either renegotiate the contract to include those, or we ask them to have new development in their city pay those.
Interesting. Nancy, you had,
I just wanted to clarify a little bit because we are not collecting anything for any capital improvements. And that is the only thing that we could collect from them, right? Because right now, they don't cover the cost of operations for our deputies to be in their
Right.
city. And we could not use impact fees to cover the cost of operations. We could only use them for the capital projects.
Right, you did not ask for my opinion on this, but I would say as a financial consultant to government entities, I would advise you to revisit your contract with any city that you're providing service to make sure that it's fully loaded. Because otherwise, taxpayers in the unincorporated area are subsidizing
Clearly.
for property taxes in the city of
yeah,
Hayden.
clearly.
Nothing against the city of Hayden. It's just,
No,
it's where
it's
we
just
end up starting
harsh
these
reality.
contracts when cities are small and we think it's kind of a one-off, and then all of a sudden the city is, exploding with growth. And it's really just an ongoing business conversation about renegotiating the cost of providing service.
Okay.
And that sometimes is the point where the city says, we'll have our own police department. That can be a policy choice. So that seems like a really exciting conversation for you all to be having.
Before we had impact fees, I was meeting with the one of the local builders associations. And I said, before you give me any money, I want to tell you, I am fully in favor of impact fees. So think about having the guy go, the president says, well, we are too.
Yes,
We are too, as long as they're fairly and uniformly
yes.
applied.
And so that was really, a lot of people still will say, oh, well, those are illegal. We had to give them all back 10 years ago. That's not why that happened.
It was done badly.
Not everyone participated and it wasn't fair. And that was a really good argument. I think that could have been fixed, but we're at a place where we are really transparently and spending so much extra time bringing people kind of into the herd with their own understanding, that I don't anticipate that problem.
Okay.
And that the fees are coming in at levels that I think are not surprising. Anyone who's building, particularly since you are co-located with Spokane. I mean, if I'm building across the border, I'm paying. This is still a very marketable community in which to build. Adding, even $3,000 or $4,000 on top of that, which gets just passed on to the buyer and amortized in their mortgage or into their rent payment. I'm not saying that doesn't create its own problems, because it does, but it is not. It is likely not going to create an inability of people to continue to build in your county. They will just be building in a way that provides government agencies with the funds to be able to serve that growth. And that's one of the things we talk about, some of these smaller fire districts. We have a lot of people coming in. They like our political or philosophical environment, but they also are used to ambulances coming in 2 minutes. And it's really hard when we have to explain to them that is not how we work here. So I think being clear that if we are trying to even continue the level of service that we provide as we build, that is allowing that new home builder to pay to ensure that we're not decreasing that
Sure.
level of service.
So, Ann, where do we go from here? What's the next step in our process?
I can provide you a proposal
Okay.
for whatever categories you want a proposal on. It is generally $10,000 per category, so if you did all 4, you can do the math there. That price is reimbursable through impact fees. So any impact fee studies that are done can be paid for. I do ask people to pay me up front and reimburse themselves, but yes, so we would, if you chose to sign a contract, I would really like to try and catch you up with the fire districts so that we can have a conversation all at one time. And that would just mean me meeting with the sheriff, meeting with parks supervisor if you're going to do that, meeting with the coroner's office. Because we've done this so similarly in other counties, it should not be difficult, it should be easy for us to catch up. And I'm going to be meeting with the Impact Fee Advisory Committee for the fire district starting in January anyway, so we would just add this to their agenda.
Now, do you need us to help you set that up? Or
Nope, I've got all those people. I'll send you the names of the people, make sure you're all okay with that, and then we will bring those people into the fray.
Cool. Makes sense?
So I think we still have pretty good timing. I like elected officials having things not come to them in little, piecemeal,
Yeah.
because this is a regional planning discussion and a discussion about fiscal sustainability.
I like it.
Interesting. Yeah, so do I. And I think to Bill's point, even when I met with NIBCA, builders and contractors, they were favorable. They did not have a problem.
I go out of my way to make sure we have active builders on these advisory committees, which is required, but
No, but it's a good thing.
yeah, one of the jokes is that I always tell my clients, I want you to get the person who's, most has a lot of demands on the buildings, at the building department desk. And that if we can bring that person into an understanding of and support of the impact fees, then we know we've really done our job. And I don't want someone showing up at a public hearing saying, never heard about this, you're killing me. That's just not fair to do to electeds, so.
And I recall, I think, when you last presented, and I think Northern Lakes might have set that up, the collection of these fees could serve as collateral for borrowing, is that true?
Again, I'm not an attorney, so I'd want to have your
Oh,
legal
okay.
counsel look at that. But yes, let's say that you decided to float a bond for a new jail pod. This is just the easiest way to talk about it.
Okay.
And when you went to the public, you said, here's the deal. 75% of this project is actually impact fee eligible. We want you to approve the bond, but we're only going to collect 25% of the cost in actual override or bond. We are going to pay for the other 75% with impact fees. Now you're gonna go get the bond up front, and your debt service will be paid for with 25% property taxes and 75% impact fees.
Understood.
So yes, that can be done, that has been done, and it's actually, we're finding, I think Kootenai County Fire and Rescue did an amazing job in their public outreach of explaining, we are asking you to pay for all of the existing stations, and we are trying to adopt impact fees that will pay for everything going forward. And having that conversation with taxpayers, I think, helps them know we're not gonna subsidize growth, and so we can support this. Did that answer your question about
Yeah,
borrowing?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, because I guess what I was thinking was, for example, if the sheriff had a situation that was approaching dire, and clearly we had to contract for the expansion.
Right.
Or the completion of the expansion.
Front the money, pay yourself
Yeah,
back is
precisely.
also, yes. We
Okay.
just, we do good accounting.
Okay.
If you've got money in fund balance or have to find money to be able to do something now, and it is growth related, but you haven't collected enough impact fees, you would just put that, that is not uncommon. I have cities that do say, we'll borrow from the general fund and pay them
And then
back
pay
with
it back.
impact fees. And that often is in the best interest of your taxpayers, particularly if we're looking at the inflation cost of construction.
Absolutely.
If you've got cash, do it now, pay yourself back, yeah.
Okay.
Now, there is a slight risk in that if there's a crash and you don't have growth, you won't be able to pay yourself back,
Precisely.
but you don't have impact fees now, so I guess it's not that much different.
Right. Anything else, Nancy? Yeah.
You said the projects are normally 8 to 11 years, 10 years projects.
Mhm.
If growth does slow down and you don't need to construct that
Excellent point.
project
What do you
within
do?
10 years, what do you do?
So that's an excellent point. State statute requires us to go through this whole process at least every 5 years. Most of my clients in fast-growing communities are doing it maybe every 3 to 4 years, just because so many things are changing. The use of this impact fee advisory committee is helpful because every year they need to come back and look at the financial statements, and we also use that as an opportunity to say, how were our growth projections and how were our costs? Because those are the two things that'll change. Now, if construction costs go up and so does growth, then we still have the same mathematical answer, right? It's no problem. What we're seeing right now is growth is still high, but inflation in construction materials is higher. So we're having to trying to keep up. In addition to relying on our advisory committee and staff to say, oh, well, this growth was, we just had another recession and now nothing's happening. We would revise things to push that project out past year 10. The good news is if I've made a good relationship between a house and its proportional share, you could grow slower, you would collect money slower, and you would build your capital slower. If it even doubles, what would we have for the county, 4% annual? 6% annual growth for the whole county, including the incorporated areas. Let's say that's 9% for the next 3 years. And we're going to need to start adding more things onto your CIP, but we're also increasing the growth. So the fees should not really
But
change much.
you keep up with it and they kind of track
They
together.
go together. And if they're not going to go together because inflation is surpassing your growth rate, then we go and update the CIP and the fees go up. And that's what I'm seeing a lot in the Treasure Valley is that what would have covered costs 4 years ago is not accurate
Happening
anymore.
now.
But it's not
Amen.
any news that people are paying more. One of the things I do recommend is that my clients adopt an inflationary index and that they increase the fees by the construction cost index each year.
Not necessarily the CPI.
Not the CPI, because what's driving our cost is really materials.
Materials.
Construction materials.
Okay.
So if clients that did listen to me over the last couple of years were able to try to keep track. So they're making small increases. And then when we do an update, I have some clients who had $4 million fire stations that are now $8 million fire stations. And if they didn't keep up, that's a doubling of the impact fee in 1 year. So there's different ways to go about it, but I think that helps not be at quite such a frightening increase all at once, and also acknowledges that, like every other builder, the county builds things, and those prices, I'm sure you receive bids for projects every day that are far beyond what you budgeted for then. So we're
We've just moved
planing
there.
that scope right.
Nancy, Bill?
Right now, cost of materials are at an all-time high.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that goes down, do you reduce your impact fees?
So that
proportionally?
inflationary index would tell us to go down.
Okay.
Never
And you
seen
would
that
do
happen, but we would do that. Right, if you tie it to the inflation index and we'd finally level off with construction costs, what we might find, because the cost of our, some of the things, apparatus, patrol cars, things like that, that cost is probably not going to change that much. But if land cost and construction cost really dropped off and it was going to make a difference in our calculations, then fees would reduce accordingly, yes.
So vehicles and apparatus are included in impact fees?
They are, as long as they have a 10-year life. So most patrol vehicles actually don't qualify. But if you have mobile command units or, anything SWAT kind of stuff, that always will qualify. Weaponry, PPE, radios, all of those qualify as well. Not replacement of existing, but if you're going to hire 10 more deputies over 10 years, you have to outfit all of those people. Those would be included. And they're not cheap, are they?
No.
Dispatch, I kind of left that out. Depending on how you manage dispatch being part of the sheriff's office, we will include the expansion of dispatch space, the purchase of those incredibly expensive chairs and dispatch consoles. So that also can be included in your sheriff's fee.
Okay. So now, back to one of your earlier points. When you say we have an advisory committee, I guess the question that I have, maybe we're both thinking the same thing, is are any current county employees?
No.
Okay.
No elected officials. No.
Okay.
No, we don't, that would
But I
be
don't mean
right.
elected officials, but I mean any of our county.
No employees, no. We might have,
Okay.
obviously I bring the chiefs with me to the meeting because I'm only dangerous enough to explain, fire stuff.
Okay.
But so, I would want Nancy to come to the meetings because that's, an important part of the process. These are citizens. And
Okay.
of the 5, we have to have at least 5 members. At least 2 of those members have to be actively involved in development, building, or real estate.
Okay.
At least 2 of them cannot be involved in those things.
Okay.
And the 5th one is a wild card. So we've developed your advisory committee, picked people from each of the other existing advisory committees
Okay.
who still meet that qualification in statute and are all residents of your county.
Got it. Statutory requirement.
Yeah,
Okay.
updated in June, that was the new requirement.
Okay.
Before you didn't have to be residents, so that's made it harder when I have, cities like Athol. I'm gonna need to find, 5 people who want to serve, who meet those requirements. But we did it. We had, we have 40 people serving on all these different advisory committees, and they will ultimately, all, be here as well with the county commission.
So, and each advisory group has a specific focus, I presume.
So technically for each fire district, they have an advisory group for every city
Oh.
they serve.
Okay.
I lucked out in that, let's say for KCFR, Post Falls already has impact fees. They already have an advisory committee. We just went through theirs.
Okay.
Same for Hayden. But so we had to get people for Hauser and for Spirit Lake and for, I can't even remember.
And that's
There's
a
a lot.
group of 5 for each of those
Five,
entities?
yes.
Okay.
So everyone has 5, but those people are also still residents of your county. So
Understood.
there's how we can kind
Understood.
of roll it up. And I like the roll-up idea because they come already educated to some extent.
Okay.
They've seen the report, they understand the way that it goes, and they can also speak to this additive effect that you've talked about, because when we all meet, I mean, it's not additive when we talk about fire, but if we add on county, they're already going to understand why we did this for fire. And then we'll talk about what's the additive effect and what's their
Understood.
concern there. So I think that's the benefit of having some overlap in those committees.
Right. Okay.
Yes, it is death by committee at this point, but I still think it really helps us move the policy along. This extra time educating and helping people understand and participate in it should be useful at the tail end when you're getting to the adoption, and being able to message to your own constituents that you have taken steps to reduce their subsidization of growth. Because there's not a whole lot you can do. This is one thing you can do, but.
All right then.
I'm good.
More
We'll send a
questions?
proposal. Who would you like me to send it to?
Do you want it?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll send it
That
to you.
was
Send it to Bill.
really great, I think.
Thank you. And
Outstanding.
reach out if you have any other questions.
Perfect, thank
But
you.
essentially, should probably be my point person. And we
Okay.
would go through this whole thing together and bring in the appropriate people of each
I
department.
would love
I never get a business analyst. I'm very excited.
You're okay with that,
Ada
aren't you,
County
Bill?
had one and,
Sure, I want to have the proposal sent to me, but
oh, yeah, but I just mean later on, I think
The
having.
discussion.
To work the mechanics?
Yes, because
Okay.
you have, I mean, I know, having been that person for Salt Lake City, the departments and the commission, sometimes have different ways of looking at things, and it's a good time to have a discussion, so.
Before we end, who's the gentleman that's with you? Forgive me, I didn't introduce you.
I'm Matthew Gerber, associate.
Okay. Welcome, Matthew.
He keeps track of all
Okay.
the actual numbers and things.
I'm the numbers person.
He's also a
Okay.
GIS person, so one of the things that was kind of challenging was, we do have, we have borders of all of these fire districts, but the census doesn't collect information by fire district.
No, they don't.
Kootenai County has a great GIS system, and we had really good help with the assessor's office, so we pulled all of the tax parcels and drew, he did, because he's young and understands how to do things like that. He drew the GIS boundary around each and was able to then get really good projections of growth and existing population. And in most cases, news to all of them, so it was helpful to all of them to get a grip on
So,
how many were in there. So yes.
Why are the highway districts not participating yet?
Good question. I think, this whole movement started, I think, really with Commissioner Rudabaugh in
Northern Lakes?
Timberlake.
Oh, Timberlake, okay.
Fire. He's on the legislative committee through all the fire chiefs. They've been working with the legislature over years to continue to clarify the statute. I said, if you want to do this again, you need to get everyone together, because I don't want to go to the county and have all these one-offs. So we started, it's been maybe 2 years, 18 months of talking to everyone and all of their commissioners and et cetera, and deciding who was in, who was out. Everyone's in. I think Worley will decide to jump in at the very last minute.
Okay.
And so I didn't approach the highway districts. I felt, well, we have a really comprehensive group of fire districts. Let's go through this process, see how it goes. Highway districts are just now becoming more interested. Even in the Treasure Valley, highway districts, except for ACHD or Ada County Highway District, have been really reticent to do this. But as they're getting hit with, they used to be, well, we're in the unincorporated area and no one drives out here. Oh, now I have 1,000 new houses being built right here, and people are going to want a stoplight or a roundabout or whatever. So we are starting to see that. Your highway districts actually did participate a decade ago when we did this process. I think it's worth reaching out to them, once I kind of make sure that we can take this all the way to the end and see. So that would be, again, an additive fee for each of those areas. But it certainly is, Gem County Road and Bridge, I think their roads fee was about $7,000 per house. Gem County, the home of Ammon Bundy, I did not think we were going to passed it. Unanimously passed it. So, I just think our particularly rural counties have no other options.
Yeah, precisely.
And also are getting so much pressure from taxpayers not to subsidize growth that, ironically, this is now in favor. So, Valley County is I think their fees will be noticeable. Roadways cost $1.5 million a lane mile, so those are expensive improvements.
Well,
Is
thank you.
this
Yeah, go right ahead.
something KMPO could be a part of, or no? Because they're not a taxing district.
There's certainly, I think, having them be part of the conversation is really critical. As not a taxing district, it wouldn't.
They wouldn't have an impact fee,
But the MPO, I think, ideally, having an MPO leading this in every county would be brilliant. I don't have an MPO in every county.
Right.
I think Kootenai County's always been really good with your planning staff and having your own metropolitan outlook that while I've sort of done this piecemeal and now have it at a place where I'm not embarrassed to tell you about it, this would be a great time to bring them in and have them also say, that wasn't where we thought we were going. Explain to us why we think we're going this way, and I would love to invite them to that table. And it may be a great time. So in Elmore County, the commissioners reached out to their own highway district commissioners and said, okay, we're doing this. Do you want to do this at the same time so that we have one conversation? I don't know what your relationship is with your highway districts, but it certainly
we're good.
is a
We're
good
good.
time to do it at once rather than, just kind of popping up bit by bit.
Okay.
Because again, we'll have one meeting with the advisory committee and not 17
And
meetings.
that's
so.
17.
Although I'm happy to do 17, we've done, 10 in the last couple days, so we love it up here.
Thank you, and you're always welcome up here. Thank you.
Thank you
This
very
was
much.
invaluable. This was great.
I will send you something this week and let me know what you need from me.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you.
Any public comment?
Yes. Adina Daniel said 2 words, Bark Tech.
Said
I'm
what?
sorry?
Bark with a V as in Victor. Bark Tech.
Vark Tech.
I'm not going to include that with the minutes.
Sounds like somebody was playing on the computer screen.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And that's it?
That's it.
Good, we're done.
Okay, we're done. I've got 12:34, excuse me, 11:34, meeting adjourned. Thank you so much.